Right guys, so we have looked at our hazard movement. That was the last thing we did. We've got our player where they interact with a hazard and it reloads the level. So now what we're going to look at is we're going to look at the first of 3 spawns. You may just want to do this one, you may be looking at this one to decide whether you want to do this one or another one. You may follow all 3. But for the first one, what we're going to do essentially is this is going to be set where it will spawn from one certain point, and we will alternate the spawn timer, so it doesn't spawn the same constantly. We don't have just a constant line of enemies. It will choose 2 numbers and it will choose a random number in between the 2. So for instance, if you set the minimum to 2 seconds, the maximum to 5 seconds, it will go anywhere between there. So what we need to do to start with is I am going to first right click, create an empty object, and I'm going to call this my spawn point. I will drag the spawn point. I'm going to put it off the screen over here just purely because I don't want you to be able to see when it's spawned in. So that's all we need to do to this for the time being. We are going to right click in here, go to create C# script. I'm going to call this spawn generator, and I'm just going to call this 1 because obviously I'm going to do 3 of them. Open this. Right, so spawn generator 1. So what we need to do, we need to declare 5 variables to start with. It's nothing too difficult. The first one is going to be a float, and this is going to be the spawn cooldown. So if I put public float spawn cooldown, we're not actually going to set this number. This number is going to be the one that gets randomized, but it still needs to be present. We're also going to put a public game object, and this is going to be called, this is going to be essentially a hazard. So this is what is getting spawned. Our next one is a public float again, and this is going to be our range min. So this is going to be the bottom end of the timer delay. Public float range max. So that, yet again, that's a public float. This will be obviously the maximum amount. And a public transform. This will be our spawn position, which we've made, so we can put it straight into there. So 3 floats, a game object, and a transform. The transform is obviously just the location of an object. So what we're going to do, I prefer to, instead of having a start function, I prefer to start with an awake function. I often find this is a little bit better for this kind of thing. And what we're going to be using is something called a coroutine. And the coroutine essentially is like a repeater. Essentially, you will do something, it'll repeat every so often. So that's what we're going to use. But first, we are going to make our spawn function. So void. I'm just going to call this spawn. Open bracket, close bracket, open close curly brace. As usual, put a little bit of space in between them. And this is going to be what we call an instantiate function. Oh, there we go. Instantiate just means, that's like generate, create an instance of. An instance is obviously a copy of an object. So open bracket, it wants to know what object we're going to instantiate. So this is obviously going to be our hazard. And then it wants to know, right, where am I creating this object? So what we're going to do is we are going to go for, where is it? What did I call it? Our hazard. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do game object dot transform. So this is going to be, I'm going to remove this. I'm going to remove our transform position purely because it's not actually going to matter at this moment, and we can have less functions. So what this will do, we're spawning the hazard, and we're spawning the hazard wherever the object this script is attached to. So there we go, we've got our spawn function. But obviously, it's not going to do it because we haven't told it to do it at any point. You know, it's not in the update function. The update function will, if we were put it in there, it would create it once a frame, and it's kind of pointless. Awake function, it do it once at the start. So it needs to happen every so often. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to delete the update function because we're actually not going to need to use it. So I'll delete that as well. We're going to use the await function, we're going to use the spawn function. The other thing we need to add is something called an IE numerator, or something like that. You say it however you want to say it. Numerator? Yeah, IE numerator. So if we type this here, so it's essentially a function, but it's a timer function. So IE, and just go to numerator. And in here, we're going to call it, what am I going to call it? Spawn time. There we go, that works. Spawn time, open bracket, close bracket, open curly brace, close curly brace. Go in between, put some space there. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to reference the spawn cooldown, which, if you remember rightly, is the first variable that we made. So we need to figure out what this spawn cooldown is going to be. So spawn cooldown equals random, so it's going to find a random number dot range, and this is obviously the range within, and then we'll set what is the range within. So we need the maximum, so this is range, oh sorry, we need the minimum, this will be range min, comma, range max. So what this will now do is this will find a random number in the range of this one to this one. So we're not going to have it too soon or too far away. It's just going to, just going to work. So underneath this line, we're going to have what's called a yield return. Oh, I can't spell. Return new, which will essentially tell it to wait for so many seconds. So wait for seconds, and then the amount of time that it's going to wait between doing this. So this will be obviously the spawn cooldown that we generated earlier. And then at the end of this, we are going to say, well actually not the end of it, the second to last line is just going to be, right, do our spawn function. So that will get to this point here, and then it'll do this. And the last line we've got is we are going to go to a start coroutine, spawn timer, or spawn time should I say, open bracket, close bracket again to finish that. So now what this is doing is this will figure out what the spawn cooldown is going to be. It will wait that amount of seconds, it'll spawn, and then after it's spawned it will start all of this again. The problem is we currently don't have it starting at the beginning. So it'll start again once it's done it once, but we haven't got it starting at the beginning. So that's where we go into our awake function. What we can do, and it's a little bit lazy, we can just take this line here, Control C to copy it, paste it in there. So now what it's doing is at the beginning it's going to start that, it's going to go all the way through, and every time it gets to the end it's going to start it again. So if we save all of this, and then I will bob this script onto this object here, we've got a couple of variables to sort out here. So the hazard is going to be this hazard here. What I'm going to do, actually, just to make it a little bit nicer and easier, I'm going to rename this hazard prefab underscore hazard. Just then, we're just making a prefab. For the time being, I'm just going to leave it in here so you can see what it does. Delete it out of here. So we haven't got the hazard in the scene at the minute. Spawn point, drag this prefab into there, so it's not referencing anything within the scene, it's just referencing this down here. So we need a min and a max for seconds, so I'm going to go with 2 second minimum, 5 second maximum. Spawn cooldown, I'm not doing anything with that because that generates from this. So hopefully, if we've done all of this right, I should click play, and we'll have a constant flow of objects. Right, let's check what this is doing. Right, so what we've done here, we've done this slightly wrong. If we watch now, let me get rid of that, drag this onto this side, and this will probably happen. As we can see, it's kind of starting quite far away, and this is purely, so if we keep watching on this screen, you'll see it started quite far away from where it should be, which is not a problem. It's working, we just need to move the position of this object. So if I drag this down to here, here we go, then hopefully this should now work a little bit easier. So if we keep watching, it's not going to kick in for a couple of seconds, it could be up to 5 seconds. Right, so they're going to start coming in now. You can see now we're getting them. So if I make this full screen again, we can see that we've got these objects. They're not coming in at exactly the same time. There's a gap between some of them. So there we go. That's working. We've got our objects in there. They're coming in. They're dropping back out. So one last time, just because we lost our bird character, leave him in here. Give it a couple of seconds, just for them obviously to come in. There we go. We can see at the bottom of the screen they're coming in, and there's a slight delay between them. But yeah, if you wanted to make them faster, obviously we change this in our danger script. But there we have it. We have these in here. We have the bird there, and if we hit one of them, we die. So there we go. That's the first of the spawners. We have it in there. It's spawning them. We can change the hazard speed again if we want. So -5 just to make them a little bit faster. Click play, and you'll see in a second when it starts spawning them in. There we go. Now they're coming in really fast. If you wanted to change how long it took for them to come in, you might change the minimum to say 1, maximum to 3, and we would see now they'd be coming in a lot faster and a lot more often. So yeah, we waited 1 second for there, 2 seconds for that, 1.6 seconds. As you can see here, the number's constantly changing. But yeah, that's it. That's the first one. So we've got one object spawning from one spawn point. The next one that I'm going to do will be one object spawning from multiple different spawn points, and it'll just pick between the two. But yeah, there we go. First one, nice and easy, done and sorted.